Did you know that the I-69 is planned to run through 8 states in the U.S. upon completion, or that it's been in existence since all the way back as 1956?
My favorite major project is I-69 finish line, just because it's been going on for such a long time and we are really now approaching the finish line.
Today's video is all about I-69 and why so many U.S. states want it. Let's begin. To begin with, what is I-69? Major Interstate Highway Y-69 is designed to run from the Canadian border in Michigan to the Mexican border in Texas at 3 separate locations. It has been dubbed the NAFTA Superhighway because it will serve as a vital commercial route between the United States and its 2 biggest trading partners, Canada and Mexico: Houston, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, and Indianapolis. Indiana are some of the major urban regions accessible via I-69. In certain places, it's under construction. In others, it's half-finished, and in some more regions, there aren't even final planned paths in place yet. In 1992, the section of I-69 that was initially intended to run between Port Huron, Michigan, and Indianapolis, Indiana, was finished. Nevertheless, the U.S. Congress expanded the route between 1993 and 2000, transforming it into the cross-country corridor it is today. The original interstate highway system was considered completed, making I-69 the final planned cross-country interstate corridor for the United States. This makes it notable. Controversy has surrounded the building of I-69. Environmental groups first opposed the area of southern Indiana between Evansville and Indianapolis. These organizations were ultimately overruled, though, and I-69 has largely been finished in that regard.
After years of waiting, we can finally say the I-69 finish line project is reaching the finish line.
Moving even further south, impoverished states like Louisiana and Mississippi have voiced their disapproval of Congress for designating the corridor without allocating funds for its construction, a criticism that has quite a bit of merit. It's projected that finishing the route might cost several billion, and some of these states don't exactly have a few $billion hanging around. However, despite everything, as the thumbnail shows, the highlighted states are making great efforts to build I-69. They have a strong desire to complete it and have given it top priority. We will therefore examine I-69's growth in each state, individually, and the current situation as we approach 2024. The most reputable of the South Texas will be our first stop. Here, in addition to the I-69 proper, there are 3 stems and 2 auxiliary roads. Texas is the only state with more I-69 than any other. There are 3 points in Texas where I-69 starts at the Mexican border: I-69W in Laredo, I-69C in FAR and US 281, and I-69E in Brownsville. These routes will follow the existing US 59, US 281, and US 77 corridors, heading north until they converge close to Victoria, Texas. From there, they merge into a single I-69 that travels the US 59 corridor to Houston. I-69 is planned to proceed from Houston via the existing US 59 corridor to Texarkana, where it will take the US 84 corridor into Louisiana. A lengthy diversion known as I-369, with 3 digits, will continue northward along the US 59 corridor in the direction of Texarkana in the interim. So what did I witness in Texas while traveling on I-69? In Laredo, signs directing you to I-69W and the World Trade Bridge can be seen when exiting I-35. As of right now, I-69W only has this section signed. Let's just say that the World Trade Bridge lives true to its name. I did, however, take it until the very end before deciding to enter Mexican customs. The roadway was flanked by vast industrial districts and was almost entirely trafficked by trucks. Indeed, this is the site of global trade. East of I-35, US 59 did continue for a little while as a motorway. However, no I-69W signage is present at this location as of yet, and I did not observe any work. There's I-69C over in the Rio Grande Valley city of FAR. It becomes fairly remote up here, I must say, having had the opportunity to drive from the present northern end of the route north of Edinburgh. From there, a typical 4-lane road leads southward to FAR. Texas is still building the final design, Therefore, the interchange with I-2 at the terminal is currently a nightmare. Currently, one must use the frontage roads to avoid the present interchange with I-2 in order to reach the border and continue down US 281. I-69C looks to terminate at I-2 rather than going straight to the border. I traveled east on I-2 via what seemed like an infinite amount of small communities before arriving in Brownsville. I-69E was completely constructed and marked in Brownsville, all the way to the southern terminus close to the border. I did notice, though, that I-69 was not signed, at least not from I-69E, even though Google Maps labeled it as such. Rather, it still bears the State Highway 550 designation and is not yet designated as I-169. I-69E went all the way up past Raymondville, heading north from Brownsville, when it became US 77. I-69E didn't reappear here, but the area is quite rural, and there were several completed or in the process of being built bypasses of the towns along the route, so I took US 77 north. It appears that Texas will complete the first segment of the three-way split at I-69E. Future I-69 corridor signs were put up on US 59 around Victoria, indicating that it will happen soon. Now, as you get to Houston, you'll find yourself in the most developed and largest metro area along the journey. The highway is also known as US 59, as many people in Houston would tell you. It runs parallel to it, but today it's I-69. You'd better get used to the new name because rejecting it is pointless. The I-69 designation is still in use up to Cleveland, and some portions north of there are now undergoing construction. The last stretch of the US 59 corridor that I saw in Texas was in Texarkana, though I haven't had the opportunity to drive along it yet. I-369 is marked and constructed in Texarkana, along the city's western bypass up to I-30. Why then is Texas so keen to have I-69? To begin with, Texas has never had a state highway plan that it opposed. It may turn out to be the only state to construct the legendary Interstate 14 that we'll cover in a subsequent video. However, Texas is probably in favor of I-69 for economic reasons, as well as, to a lesser extent, more mobility. Texas is going to be the center of this new, flourishing trade as the U.S. shifts its manufacturing from China to Mexico. I-69 will pass through far less inhabited area than I-35, which is a thickly populated corridor that now handles the majority of NAFTA trade. This makes I-69 a great corridor for transporting the enormous volume of freight traffic that is entering the state. Additionally, by doing this, some of the problems on I-35 will be lessened and more space will be available for local traffic. Due to their existing isolation from the interstate highway system and general disregard by visitors, certain East Texas towns may also experience economic gains. This following state, however, is among those that oppose I-69, or for which it is not a top priority. It is Louisiana. It is anticipated that I-69 will travel across the US 84 corridor to enter Louisiana from Texas. After that, the route will pass close to Shreveport, acting as a kind of outer southern bypass around the region, before entering Arkansas and continuing on to El Dorado. Louisiana's I-69 is special since it will build a brand new highway where none previously existed, instead of adhering to an existing corridor. Why is Louisiana against I-69? In Louisiana, though, the answer to that depends on your priorities. I-69 serves very little of Louisiana's population and is primarily used as a pass-through route. Additionally, the state is concentrating more on finishing the Interstate 49 corridor, which does connect to most of its population centers. And last, Louisiana's current road system is seriously lacking in upkeep. There were several potholes and cracked pavements along I-20 in Shreveport. The main issue facing Louisiana is I-10, which passes through several old bridges in Baton Rouge and Lake Charles, and is soon to reach the end of its usable life due to its extensive route across the state's bayous and swamps. If the federal government doesn't intervene, Louisiana may be faced with a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure catastrophe related to I-10. I-69 is therefore a far-off dream for Louisiana. It's possible they won't get to experience it. Not even future I-69 corridor signage will be found throughout the state. To be fair, though, a study stating the necessity of I-69 was conducted by the state DOD. However, it is not prioritized among governmental infrastructure initiatives. You simply don't have time to ponder about I-69 when you're broke. Another state to consider is Arkansas. They have a desire for I-69, but as you can see from my previous video, they also have a lot of other interests in mind. I-69 will pass through some of the poorest and most forgotten regions of the nation as it travels through the southeast of Arkansas. Due to how remote and time-consuming it is to get to these regions, I was unable to personally visit them, which is a clear indication of the necessity for I-69. However, Arkansas is in favor of I-69. They even constructed a makeshift two-lane version of it around Monticello down here. Arkansas thus lacks the large funds necessary to realize its ambitious plans for road building, although having ambitions to match those of its neighbor, Texas. Arkansas primarily desires I-69 in this region for financial gain. You're kind of left out of the economic riches of modern America if you live too far from the highway. Not one of these towns in southeast Arkansas even has direct access to an interstate highway with 4 lanes. The closest one is in Pine Bluff, which is about an hour away. Particularly Pine Bluff is incredibly isolated. Although traveling there and back takes a lot of time, and there aren't many contemporary conveniences close by, I really want to see this place. So having an international corridor pass through is undoubtedly a start. Even though I-69 wouldn't ensure that any commercial activity will locate in the area. I-69 is desired in Arkansas for another purpose. It serves as a diversion to I-40 and I-30. I-40 and I-30 are currently major goods truck highways in the state, much as I-35 in Texas. Perhaps building I-69 would be simpler and more advantageous for the state as a whole than widening these current routes to accommodate the growing volume of business traffic. This following state, Tennessee, however, is one that is working towards passing I-69 and does desire it. It's an easy completion in that area, as I-69 continues due north through Memphis, Tennessee, concurrently with I-55, I-240, and subsequently I-40. It seemed that Tennessee has decided not to install official I-69 shields at this time, preferring instead to leave future signs along the route when I pass through Memphis in January. Though this area is in desperate need of a third river crossing. What is signed in Memphis is the outer loop, I-269, which it shares with the Memphis suburbs in Mississippi. I wouldn't mind seeing this circle extended across the Mississippi River. Following Memphis, it is to proceed north along the US 51 corridor, passing through the cities of Union City and Dyersburg until entering Kentucky around Fulton. A bypass through Union City is currently being built and should open very soon. The remainder of Tennessee is served by 4-lane divided highway US 51. Therefore, the state will probably need to construct multiple bypasses in order to complete I-69 here. Tennessee wants I-69, but why? Tennessee's reasons are probably also financial in nature. Thanks to people moving from the Northeast and the Rust Belt, Tennessee is among the states that has experienced significant population increase and economic development. However, things are progressing more sluggishly in Northwest Tennessee. This is because I-69 cuts travel times to the Memphis metro region. It may pave the way for future industrial development in these areas. Kentucky is next. Kentucky is unique in that it likely required the least amount of work to complete I-69, because the state's parkway system had already made the corridors it traverses controlled access motorways. Between Mayfield and I-24 in Kentucky, I-69 traces the route of the acquired parkway from the Tennessee state boundary to I-24. Although the bought parkway's portion from Mayfield to the Tennessee state line is legally designated as I-69, it is still undergoing upgrades to meet interstate standards. After continuing eastward until breaking off along the Western Kentucky Parkway, the concurrency with I-24 continues. After then, I-69 turns onto the Pennyrile Parkway and travels northward into Henderson. The highway ends slightly south of the Audubon Parkway at this point. From there, it will continue on the existing US 41 until taking a new routing that will lead to a new Ohio River Bridge crossing. There is construction going on here right now. Additionally, I-169, a spur route, travels southward along the Pennyrile Parkway in the direction of Hopkinsville before coming to an end at I-24 to the south of that city. Additionally, it is undergoing an upgrade in order to become a member of the I-69 family. So why is Kentucky in favor of I-69? Since Kentucky already had a parkway system that overlaps with I-69, the state's purpose seems to be the desire to obtain the power and blue shield associated with it. Simply said, the requirements of that blue shield and its criteria are more significant economically than those of any old motorway. As we'll talk about in the following state, Kentucky likewise intends to replace the existing river bridge carrying US 41 with a new, higher one. We pass through Kentucky and into Indiana, a state that is desperate to build Interstate 69 and is making great efforts to do so. It is possible to argue that I-69 is the most significant highway corridor in the state of Indiana. It passes through every significant population center in the state as it goes diagonally from the southwest to the northeast. It will cross the Ohio River in Evansville to enter the state, then head north to Bloomington, which is home to the University of Indiana, before arriving in Indianapolis, the state capital and largest city. After that, it will hitch a ride on the I-465 Beltway, which connects to around 100 additional motorways that encircle the city. I-69 travels through Fort Wayne after Indianapolis, where it creates the I-469 Beltway. The completion of I-69 extends north of Indianapolis to the Michigan state line. It's also finished between Evansville and Bloomington, albeit it stops short of Indianapolis right now. For Indianapolis, I noticed that there was a lot of work being done to enhance the corridor and prepare the city for I-69. It took well over 15 minutes to cover a few miles. So if you drive through here, be prepared to wait at the southern intersection with I-465. There will be major delays at the northern intersection with I-465 and I-69 as well, as it is now undergoing construction. Why then is Indiana so keen to get I-69? All right, let us begin with Evansville. The existing bridge that spans the Ohio River to connect Evansville, Kentucky with Henderson, Kentucky is dilapidated. Its useful life is coming to an end, and it is barely hanging on to support the traffic that still requires it to cross the river. Upon my visit, I observed that the workers were performing haphazard repairs in an attempt to prolong its functionality. With the arrival of I-69, travelers will be able to cross between two states easily, safely, and in a brand new, shining bridge that meets all current criteria. Then, with the arrival of I-69, Indianapolis will have a complete beltway encircling the city, in addition to a staggering 42-digit interstate motorways. Although Indianapolis has never been particularly fascinating, the town will undoubtedly live up to its moniker as the crossroads of America as a result of all these important highways coming together. Lastly, I-69 simply links the major population centers of Indiana. The three biggest cities in the state are Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and Evansville. Before I-69, there was no quick way to go from Evansville to Indianapolis. When the primary thoroughfare in your state happens to be the future Superhighway that will carry so much of North America's business, that's of logistical interest. Indiana is in prime position to get some of this business. They even have a nifty I-69 website set to track the progress of the highway, which they expect to have finished by the end of 2024. So with all the spots that are going to be hidden, I-69 might be more important to Indiana than to any other state. Finally, we can consider Michigan. Here, I-69 travels from the Indiana state line to Lansing, the state capital, and then turns north towards Flint and the Canadian border at Port Huron. I-69 is finished in Michigan, where people have been taking advantage of it for some time. Not much to say about this, but a couple of intriguing points. Near Lansing, there's a concurrency with Interstate 96, which is the opposite route. Thus, you are able to travel both I-69 and I-96 simultaneously here. Use that information however you see fit. Additionally, after Lansing, the highway becomes an east-west route instead of a north-south one, which is unusual for an interstate highway. There you have it, folks. The states in favor of and against I-69. Which other states along this path do you reside in? Have you personally traveled on and experienced I-69? Do you think I-69 should be finished? If you like this video, you'll love the one showing on your screen right now. Click now and we'll see you in the next one.